Hey everybody, welcome to another episode here of Ontario Landlord Series presented by CRESI. Today we're going to have a conversation with Gary Hibbert. He's a realtor, investor specialist as well from the east end of the city, right out there in Peterborough. He's been working with his brokerage. I've been seeing Smart Choice now, I think close to a decade is how long I've been seeing that around now, and just kind of following what he does over there on the east side of the city. We've met a little bit, connected, and yeah, we're going to bring him on today to talk to you about it. So I won't introduce him better than he will himself. So here we come. This is Mr. Gary Hibbert. How you doing today?
Great, man. Listen, thank you very much for having me here, Kevin. Excited to do this and listen, share what I've learned over the years. Not only just the success, but I think also more importantly the mistakes. I want people to learn from the mistakes that I've made, and so that they don't have to step on the same landmines.
That's amazing. I was just speaking with a client today who sadly she bought something without us and had a great idea, but a very poor plan and poor team around her. And now here we are trying to dig back and figure out and correct the issue that she's created. So I agree with you 100%. Passing down wisdom of mistakes made prior is a great way to help people not make those same mistakes moving forward.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So why don't you start off? Give us a little bit of description about yourself, who you are, what you do, and how you help landlords.
Yeah, geez, how do I help landlords? Well, look, I'm a real estate investor. I'm a real estate agent. I started investing back in 2008. And the reason why I got into it was because I realized back then I couldn't outpace inflation. Inflation was only about 2% back then. And my raise at work was less than 2%. And I'm like, okay, the one thing that's bailed me out several times is my house. I'm like, well, what if I just bought one more? And then that just led me down a path of um, going into rooms and learning from people that were where I wanted to be. And from there, I then started a company called Smart Home Choice. Which is a real estate education company. The funny thing is, I didn't know anything about real estate investing. I'd made a couple mistakes in the beginning. I only had about, I think at that time, two or three properties, but what I did was reached out to people that were successful and different industry experts and had them come in and talk to our small, very small group of investors at the time, like friends and family and whoever wanted to come out and maybe learn a little bit more about real estate investing. But what it did was it was helping me build my network. And so then fast forward, we've been doing this now for 15 years. We've got a great network of different industry experts, and we've invested anywhere from Toronto to Durham region to Peterborough, and along the 401 corridor. And I continue to keep doing it. I love it. And I love giving back to the community. And my whole philosophy is always like, just one investment property can change your life. Sometimes you don't need to have 1,000 doors, but, one or two can definitely make a big difference. And especially in the world that we live in today with so much inflation.
A lot of investors don't want a bunch of properties. They just want that one to help with retirement or whatever, and that's what they're thinking about as a savings plan. But what
Yeah.
those landlords I find don't realize is that it's still a business. They are still a landlord, and they do have to do things properly. You can't just think about, oh, my house appreciated, that house is going to appreciate, and down the road one day I'll just cash in. There's a lot of things that go along the way, a lot of things they can take advantage of. Again, tax breaks and different things like that as a landlord, as a business owner that I think a lot of people miss out on. And I like what you said there with the education part. That's something that we always try to do as well, is educate and inform so people can make whatever decision is best for them, right? We're as individual as our fingerprints. So what some people want, other people's don't. But information is something everybody looks for. That's for sure. So
Yeah, exactly. And there's so many different investing strategies out there. So one of the best things to do is, when you get into it, and there's a lot more real estate investment clubs out there today than when I first started. There was very few. I had to travel to Oakville or, Mississauga to go and learn. But here's what you need to do for the first 3 to 4 months is attend these events. You're going to hear a bunch of different real estate investing strategies. And then it shouldn't take you about more than 4 months or so to pick a strategy that suits your lifestyle and then run with that. And don't worry about any other strategy. Just pick that strategy, focus on it. And I would say do it for at least 3 or 4 years before you decide that you want to move on to something different.
master one before you're moving on, right? You can't really be a jack of all trades.
That's right.
Um, no, that's excellent. You mentioned your investing group that you have and everything that goes on there. So I'm sure you're hosting events and stuff like that. Do you have an event coming up that maybe you want to talk about or share a little bit about?
Yeah. Oh man, I got an awesome event that's happening. It's on May the 8th. We're going to be doing out here in Ajax at the Ajax Hilton Hotel. Man, I've got, I don't know, over 10, 11 speakers coming out. I've got this lady, she knows how to analyze your face. So she'll be analyzing Robert Kiyosaki, I think Grant Cardone, Donald Trump, and just to take a look at their eyes, their eyebrows, their nose. So it's kind of a fun, kind of a way to warm up the crowd. Then I've also got JG. He was part of Rain before, talking about investing in garden suites out in Peterborough. They can actually now do 4 units out there. So we're touching on that. Then I've got a panel discussion on infinite banking. My mortgage agent will be there as well too, whether or not you should be breaking your mortgage or locking in, or what's happening in the market. I've also got Matthew Frederick, who's going to be there as well too, the art of the deal. Um, and then, man, what else? Alfonso Quadro will be there, so he's going to be the keynote speaker. The way that we're going to do it, though, is me and Alfonso will be up front, and we're just going to have a conversation. We're going to allow the crowd to be able to ask us any questions. I've got my lawyer there talking about what's happening in the condo market. Rent Panda will be there to talk about where things are right now with the rental market. Man, I got a couple other ones. I can't remember them all, but it's going to be a packed night. Super excited for it. And yeah, if people want to register for that, that'd be great. And thanks for allowing me to share that.
Yeah, so definitely everybody, the link will be in the comments or in the bio or wherever magically it's going to be placed, but you'll be able to find it. If you struggle, reach out to me and I'll make sure that you get that link and that you can register on May 8th as well for the mastermind event. Um, so with everything that's going on right now, you mentioned garden suites. I think that's huge, and the densification of our different municipalities. Everybody wants a little bit more.
Yep.
Garden suites is a very, very interesting topic. People are thinking about how it's going to affect their lives. So I think that'll be a good one to listen to. I'm getting questions about it all the time. There's a company out here in Guelph that I've started to look into that's building them out, but there's not a lot of options for people to do that right now, right? There's really just a little bit because it's so new to everybody still. But I think it's a great way to add some more income to an investment property. I don't know if I'd want anybody living in my personal backyard. Some people do to supplement that income, but I think if you have a duplex to put another one out back is a great way again to add a little bit more income.
Yeah, for sure. And I've worked with a lot of first-time home buyers as well too, outside of real estate investors, and some of the clients that I've worked with, where they're looking for their very first home. Uh, Listen, it's not cheap anymore, and so that mortgage is anywhere from 3,000 to 4,500 to $5,000 a month. And if you can supplement your income, where now you can convert that basement into a second unit or buy even a turnkey property, you just now potentially cut your mortgage payments in half. Now, when you start getting into the garden suite, if you're an investor, um, or if you're just a homeowner, that is a great way to get started, but you don't have to get right into the garden suite right away. And then when you move from that home, you do the same thing as well too. And I've seen clients do that, and I'm telling you, by their third home, they're because your first home shouldn't be your dream home, but that third home now can become your dream home, and then you can start adding garden suites to those properties because they're also it's not cheap as well too, right? To add a garden suite, but you want to look for properties that have the lot size that will allow you to do that. And so, really, what I'm saying is like opening up to not just investors but also homeowners as well too.
We talk a lot about basement apartments. That's again something that is really hot topic right now. We've actually strung together 4 episodes about that we're going to create into one video for a little bit of a plug there, speaking to different people the contractor, the mortgage agent, the insurance, and the paralegal, just so people understand. Because again, even though you're living upstairs, you're renting out your basement, you're still a landlord, right? Even though you live on that property, you're still a landlord. The RTA is in effect, and the LTB is what is going to control everything. So you need
Mhm.
to understand what's going on while they're living in your basement. I think there's a great way again where we come in for a couple of our clients. They live upstairs and rent out their basement, but the tenant in the basement believes upstairs is also a tenant. So they use our management services so that they don't have to be the owner upstairs and get bothered on that Saturday night, which is a great little feature where they just go, oh, you know what? Let's call CRESI Property Management. Don't worry, we'll get it fixed. Whether it's the owners or the tenants that call us, they're both acting as tenants, and I think it's a great way to keep giving them their peace while they're living upstairs. Because they do have completely separate units, right? So it is.
Yeah, look, and especially if you're getting to this for the first time, I think the most important thing is to lean on the experts. Have somebody, whether it be a property manager, whether it be, a home inspector or contractor, always reach out to the experts. Lean on your network. It just makes things so much easier, and especially in the day and age that we live in today, you want to make sure that you're putting the right person in your property, especially if you're living there.
Most important thing, tenant screening, putting the right person in, because once they're in, they're in. The only thing that matters is if you had shared kitchen or something like that, right? If they're in a completely separate dwelling, the same rules apply as if they're in a separate condo that you own and they're renting out from you. So definitely make sure you know who you're using, whether it's your realtor doing a screening or all the screening tools out there. I agree with Gary there 100%. Let's always use professionals for everything. It's the best way to
They're a
go
lot more
about it, right?
sophisticated now, a lot more sophisticated. There's AI, there's documentation fraud, there's so many different things now that they can do. And if you're not familiar with the right questions to ask or the right documentation to make sure that you have in your hands, it doesn't take much for them to be able to slip in, right? And so, and if you are going to do it yourself, be careful of them strumming your heartstrings, right? You always want to make sure you see all the documentation, right? Because professional tenants are really good at hiding in with the rest of the crowd. I will share this stat. This is actually an interesting stat. I did talk about this when I first got into it, and I asked somebody the other day if the numbers are still the same. But 80% of tenants are good, 10% of tenants are great, and 10% of tenants are bad. Now, the numbers have changed slightly. Maybe it's changed a little bit. But the bottom line is that 10 or 15% of tenants that are bad or experts are really good at hiding in with the other 80% that are good. But I share that status that you still do have a very high success rate. The problem what they're highlighting now on the news, media, social media is that all tenants are bad. Yes, there are some bad apples out there, 100%, but the success rate, most people just want a place to live. And so if you educate yourself properly, if you understand how to protect yourself from the people that are bad, and you get the same in any industry, the success rate is very high. I look at my portfolio and I still it's I'm at very close to 100% with all the properties that I own in regards to the good tenants that I have. Not in the beginning, I didn't. I learned a lot in the beginning, but again, if you're not sure, make sure that you're reaching out to people who understand what they're doing.
Yeah, the number is actually close to 40% of Canadians pay rent. So right there, you cannot say that all 40% of Canadians are bad apples, right? And at the
Right.
same time, we also have bad landlords. And I truly believe a lot of times, sometimes bad situations create bad tenants and bad landlords when something's not dealt with properly. Just again, having that property manager or somebody in the middle to communicate back and forth instead of it getting emotional between two people, landlord and tenant. That is when they're wanting something or something needs to get fixed or they don't see eye to eye. Having that middle person is a great way to do it. But yeah, uh, a lot of tenants are very good people. If everything was perfect about that tenant, they probably would have bought a house, right? There's a reason they are renting. You just got to find out. I say everything is always a piece to the puzzle. If someone says I have bad credit, I'm like, yeah, but why do you have bad credit? You're just going through a divorce and you're coming out of something and whatever happened that way. We can work through different things and see different things, but credit is definitely something to look at and to understand about why they're in that situation, but it's not the be all and end all when you're looking at something.
Yep, exactly.
So our market right now, we're in the GTA, the Toronto area. You're on the east side, I'm on the west side, but I don't think it matters. I think the same is going across the country. Real estate is on sale. Right now, there is a lot of condo inventory for sure, assignments, new builds that are coming out, resales that have been around for a little while where prices are just um, much lower than they were before, 25 to 30% at the peak, right? Or these are
Yeah.
deals to be had. Um, this is definitely a time to buy, right? Don't you agree with that?
Uh, 100%. I think right now there's a lot of fear in the market. The numbers are starting to now finally make sense again. Interest rates are coming down. There's a lot of concerns about tariffs and where things are happening. But w- I do believe right now we're going to be going through a very large transfer of wealth. And so unfortunately, uh, there's winners and there's losers. And so there's properties right now where you can get deals on it, but also you're creating a win-win because you're sometimes getting somebody out of a situation that they no longer want to be in. And so now I think there's some great opportunities. However, what you've got to do is when you're looking at these opportunities and picking them up is that you got to make sure number one, and I've always said this right from the beginning, and I learned this from early on, is that it does it cash flow. Is this something that now can cash flow? Number one, and number two, does it have higher and best use? You see, the problem with the condos, and I never got into it, and it's unfortunate that so many people did, is that it was a very speculative game. It's like going to the casino and gambling. And look, for many years it was a great gamble. Unfortunately, when it turns, it can sometimes completely wipe you out, and that's what you're seeing right now in that condo market. Will it come back again? Of course. Do I think if you're looking to get into the market, is now a good time to maybe get into a condo for personal use? Yeah, possibly. But eventually you may want to raise a family, but it's a good way to get into the market if that's what you can afford. But there's lots of great opportunities out there right now. Um, I haven't bought anything since 2019, well, at least not in the country. I bought outside the country, but I am now looking to pick something up. I'm actually looking to maybe pick something up in Toronto because, if I can now, because of the change in the bylaws where now you can turn a single family home into a 4 or 5 unit, that now makes sense. The numbers make sense. And so that's what I'm always looking for is cash flow, higher and best use, and what can I do with that property? So yes, great. I think it's a phenomenal opportunity right now. But a lot of people don't talk about this in the Great Depression. You hear about the depression part and how many people were unfortunately on the wrong side, but also too during that time, that is when one of the most amount of millionaires were created. And so the Kennedys, that's where they got their money from. Same thing with 2008. Wealth doesn't just disappear, it just transfers hands. Just same thing in 2008. There were losers and there were winners, and so you're going to see the same thing in this market as well too. You just got to be on the right side of that.
Yes, sadly, there are people that got stuck again with that condo market. Like, I think what happened was too many people started to realize or think that real estate was a get rich quick, not a get wealthy slow. The assignments were going crazy in the middle of the teen years there, where people were making $100,000 plus just off paper, assigning it over a couple of years' time, and all
Yeah.
that speculation. The people that bought more. I actually read the other day that the Toronto condo market bust is going to cost investors somewhere between 10 and 14 billion dollars, which
Yeah.
absolutely blows my mind that that much is going to be suffered through people. I've definitely spoken to people that bought more than they can handle, that they can't close on now, and are trying to figure out different ways to do it. It's unfortunate, but I think again that was something with a poor plan, in my opinion, because you don't know what the future is ever going to bring. But Mr. Warren Buffett says, when others are greedy, you should be fearful. And when others are fearful, you should be greedy. And right now, people are definitely fearful, as you mentioned. It's the word I'm hearing all the time is uncertain. I don't know what's going to happen. One thing that I know that is certain is that every Canadian needs a roof over their head, and whether you own it or rent it, you still need that roof. So it's a good time for investors to be picking up another property. um, let's talk a little bit about the conversion, because I agree with you there too. To take something and convert it to have the higher and best use is definitely a way to increase your ROI. However, you're doing that, whether it's a big one bedroom sometimes can get turned into two beds, or you're going through all your different house to cut it up to make it into that triplex or fourplex. Contractors need to be involved, permits in place, and everything like that. Why don't you talk a little bit about your processes there?
Yeah. So when you're talking about conversions, again, you're creating multiple units, and when you're creating multiple units, then what you're doing is you're force appreciating that home. There's different ways of doing it and different markets that you can do it in. I think now Toronto is a great opportunity. However, you do need deeper pockets. There's no doubt about it. You're looking at an entry point of maybe anywhere between $8 to $1 million. That would be in a decent neighborhood that you can turn into 4 or 5 units. If you want to get into another conversion, but in an area that I really like a lot, is Peterborough. Peterborough out there, I believe now or coming up soon, you can go up to 4 units. And that entry point is anywhere from, say, maybe high fours now you can get into it, but probably more like in a decent neighborhood, you're going to be like mid fives. That's an easier um, price to digest. And you can easily convert it into a 2, 3 unit. I believe the main house now you can do three and then a garden suite in the back. Um, I'll share this with you as well too. Is that at the peak of the market, when was the peak? Was it 2022? Was it
Yeah.
2020? Yeah,
Yeah.
2022, somewhere around whatever,
March.
Jan. One of my clients bought at the peak in Peterborough. They converted it into a 2 unit. Um, they don't have a garden suite yet, but they have the lot size to have a garden suite, and they cash flow over $1,000 a month. That is what you want, so that even when you are buying in the highest of the market or the lowest, the numbers still make sense as an investor. And I think people forgot, well, one, they forgot fundamentals, or two, they didn't understand fundamentals. And so this is one of the reasons why I like the conversions, I like the forced appreciation, and I like higher and best use. And then I'll wrap it up with saying that, when you're looking at a market, whether it's Peterborough or whatever area that you like, look at the fundamentals. And what are the fundamentals? Well, is the population going up? Is the jobs increasing? Is there infrastructure being built in that area? And then eds and meds, so education and hospitals. And so take a look at some of those fundamentals and see whether or not that city makes sense. And I love secondary markets and tertiary markets. They make sense to me. And some people say, "Well, I wouldn't live there." Well, you don't have to.
Yeah.
You're renting it out, right?
Exactly right. Right. The investor never lives in the property. I had a couple from Oakville buy something in Hamilton, and that's something they said to me, "Oh, I would never live here." And I'm like, "But there's so many people that would." You know what I mean? And
Exactly.
you just have to get over that. Just because it doesn't fit for your needs, it's going to work for a lot of different people. And
Yeah.
we go through that all the time with that education to make sure that they understand there.
Exactly.
As you're mentioning with fundamentals,
Yep.
um, it is location, 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 right? That is the one thing that doesn't change. It's the one thing we say all the time, and it matters the most. I think even more than when you're choosing where you're going to live. I think it matters more when you're choosing an investment. Um,
Yep.
One of my little tricks that I use when I'm thinking about areas and stuff like that. I don't have millions of dollars to spend on research and development of different things, but I do know that Shoppers Drug Mart and Starbucks do those things, and the areas that they're in are more affluent and stuff like that. When you're looking at stuff to really try to figure out where you want it to convert and everything, so there's signs out there that you can use to figure out location, but you're looking at transportation for sure and where they're going to be at, because a lot of tenants are using public transportation as well, whether that's GO train, subway, whatever they're looking at needing to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, 100% right. Yeah, transportation is very important. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we ended up going to Peterborough was when they were developing the 407. And so before it connected to the 115 highway, we saw where it was going and what was happening in the future plans. So you also want to take a look at, where are the future plans? Where is that GO train line going? Where is the LRT or the subway going? So, you start taking a look at those things, and you start making educated and calculated decisions, but again, always remembering cash flow. It really isn't a difficult game, but you've got to realize that it's going to get rich quick, right? And you never know when appreciation is going to come, so don't worry about appreciation. And people say, but why not? Well, the last 2 years just showed you why not, right? You focus on cash flow. So cash flow is incredibly important.
I will agree with that one again. Value really only matters with your property when you're buying it, when you're selling it, or when you're refinancing it. At the end of the day, if you bought a property for $500,000 and your rent is here and your mortgage is here and the property value drops, your rent and your mortgage stay at the same place until they come due, no matter what that value of the house is doing, unless you are buying, selling, or refinancing. So again, making sure you have money coming in is great. That's why we also like having multiple units, because a single family home, if something happens to that one family where they no longer can make a payment or anything like that, you have zero money coming in for the property. Where at least if you have multiple units, you're getting a little bit of help to keep things going. Um,
Yeah.
but
Agreed.
yeah, life can happen, right? Like a lot of times you have good tenants and I had a gentleman have a stroke. Now we have to go through different things and getting back on track. But things happen, right? You just have to figure things out as you're going forward. I think this has been a great conversation. I hope people have joined in. Before we let everybody go, I'm going to ask for your biggest or best landlord win that you want to share with people.
My biggest landlord win. Wow, I've had a lot of wins. I've had a lot of losses. The biggest one, was I would say maybe this was an interesting one. So back in 2016, my partner and I we bought an investment property in Oshawa. We picked it up for like 250 something, I think it was. It was a detached home, and we're going to convert it into a 2 unit. So we finished the upstairs. We put a tenant in there, and the rent from that property covered the mortgage payments. So we were just kind of break even, like perfect. So we went to the basement, and then we started doing the conversion down there. We had to wrap the basement because there was water that was coming in. And then we did a property tour to show people, hey, look, here's what we're doing. That was the start of doing property tours. And when people saw what we were doing, they were like, oh, I want to do the same thing you're doing. And at the time, I don't think it was even called the Burr. We were just going in there, renovating it, and then we put tenants in the basement. But what we did was we actually extended the the length of time of when it was going to be completed. And the reason being was that it was break even anyway. And then we were as realtors, we're getting transactions out of that. And we did that for about a year and a half. It felt like it was 2 years. It felt like it was forever. But that was a huge win for us. And that was where we showed a lot of people how to do the Burr, and how to do single family conversions into 2 units.
If you're not familiar with the Burr strategy, it's buy, renovate, rent out, refinance. And with that, you should be able to take out some tax-free money that you can then either put into your pocket or put back into another investment. With that strategy, it is a very good one, and we'll talk about that in another episode in more details for sure. But no, that's going to bring today's episode to a close. So I thank everybody for listening. Gary, thanks so much for joining and sharing with us today.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. And yeah, I always enjoy doing this. I always enjoy sharing my knowledge and sharing my journey and the mistakes that I've made along the way. And even if it even if it only touches one person and they're able to do something from this conversation, then it did exactly what it was supposed to do.
Well, don't forget about the mastermind on May 8th. If anybody wants to go, I'm going to go so we can ride up from the west side to the east side together, and let's go and let's have a good day and learn something from an awesome panel of speakers. So again, as always, thanks so much for listening. If you know a landlord out there that um, needs some great information like what we're sharing, please don't forget to pass along this podcast to them so that they can be getting the same information as well with us. So as always, thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you again soon. Bye for now.
Please remember, while we are professionals, this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The advice shared may not apply to your unique situation. Always seek personalized advice from a qualified professional before making any investment decisions.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us this week. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you're finding it informative and useful, make sure to like, subscribe, share with a friend so that we can keep getting the information out there to Ontario landlords. And keep on joining us. We'll see you next time.